All right, what's going on, y'all? So today we're going to be talking about what I believe to be the most underrated steroid for bodybuilding. I'm going to be talking about why I believe it's underrated and then how I actually go ahead and use this steroid differently than most people. So the steroid we're talking about today is Masteron. You'll hear all the time people will say you should only take Masteron in a contest prep or in a cut because Masteron only shines when you're at really, really low body fat percentages. That is true. Masteron comes with a great cosmetic effect. When you are at low body fat percentages, you'll have a very, very dry, hard look. But that's not to say Masteron is not great in other purposes too. You know, a lot of people will stay away from Masteron because they think it's a very, very weak builder and it's not great for trying to build muscle. And I'm going to talk about why I believe that is incredibly incorrect. So we've talked a lot about on this channel about Primo. Primo is another DHT. It's essentially, you know, the brother steroid to Masteron. They're kind of the different side of the same coin. They act very similar, but they have some key differences. First off to say, I absolutely love Primo. You guys know that from other videos. But there's reasons why Masteron many times will be chosen over Primo. And in my opinion, I'm choosing Masteron a lot more over Primo. One, Primo many times is heavily faked. So you got to really, really make sure you've got a great source for Primo. The upside to it is a lot of times if you're getting faked Primo, a lot of times it is Masteron, but sometimes it's test, sometimes it's something else. So you want to make sure you've got a good source. The other thing too is Masteron typically is quite a bit cheaper than Primo, and you can run more milligrams per milliliter. So it makes the injections, a little bit easier. So when it comes to cost and injection frequency, Masteron might be chosen over Primo. But all that's to say, I love Primo, but Masteron is incredibly versatile. So Primo, one thing Primo does a good job at is it does manage the side effects of having high estrogen. So it'll keep you from aromatizing as easily. With that being said, and this is why Masteron is so versatile, Masteron typically, most people does even a better job at managing estrogen. So this is where a lot of people aren't getting what they could get out of Masteron. What you could use Masteron for, if you're really, really trying to pack on a lot of muscle, is essentially allowing you to keep more estrogen side effects at bay so you're able to raise your test levels higher. So now let's say, instead of running, 500 tests with an AI, now you could run 500 tests with 500 Masteron and no AI. Plus you're going to get the added milligrams anabolic load from the Masteron. So it's not like the Masteron itself is not going to help, not going to help it on its own with building muscle, but it's going to allow you to raise your test higher. So let's say you're someone who aromatizes heavily. You've never been able to, take your test over, say, 600 milligrams a week, and you're really, really trying to pack on size. In a growth phase, what you could do is keep titrating up the test as you titrate up the Masteron. For a lot of people are using way higher tests than they are to Masteron. If you go ahead and run a 1-to-1 ratio, that works great in some people. Some people even will run lower tests than Masteron. But what it does allow is it allows you to take your testosterone higher. So this last offseason, pretty much all I ran this last offseason was test and Masteron. But what I was able to do, and it worked incredibly well for putting on new muscle, is I was able to take my testosterone higher than I've ever been able to take it before because I was also taking the Masteron up with it. The Masteron ended up being just over what test was. I was able to get my test to 875 milligrams a week. That was a very heavy cycle for me. I've never run tests that high, but I was able to run it with no negative side effects because I had Masteron close to about the same level as I did the test. So that's the beautiful thing with Masteron. Masteron, you're able to really, really control the side effects of high estrogen. Really does a great job of managing estrogen. That way you're able to run your test a little bit higher rather than having to add in all these other compounds. With that being said, yes, it's not going to be as great of a builder on its own as, say, something like NPP, even argued Primo. But in my experience, my opinion, Primo and Masteron build at about the same rate. I'm typically choosing Masteron over Primo lately, or at least over the last year. But that's the great thing with it. So that's how I would use it in a growth phase, and how I've been using it is essentially I use it to allow me to take my testosterone higher, which really, really creates a new look. If you want to have that kind of, open bodybuilder look, that really, really 3D look, you're going to need to run your test higher. Going ahead and keeping your test low while you add in all these other compounds can be good for certain purposes, but there's nothing like having, test a bit higher. And having test and Mastron, for most people, that's going to be well tolerated with blood work. Yes, you're going to have some things you need to look out for, especially, lipids. Mastron can definitely hit your lipids hard, but a lot of people tolerate it really well compared to other compounds out there. So as far as safety profile goes, there's still risk mitigation, but this is on the lower to moderate end. And you can really, really pack on a lot of muscle. So in a cut, and this is where most people do use Mastron, you're going to really get a hard, dry look when you get to lower body fat percentages. But when you're growing, you're going to stay harder and drier as well. So, as you're pushing up, you're not going to have any of that bloat, that moon face, that extra water weight that you'd have if you're running, say, test and MPP by itself, or you're doing something like D-ball, something like that. You're not going to have any of that extra water weight. So while the gains from the Mastron might be a little bit slower, one, you're taking a lot of gains from the testosterone, and then B, the gains you do get are really, really clean, solid gains that you'll be able to keep quite a bit after you stop Mastron. But when you're in a cutting scenario, how I do it, which is a little bit differently than most, is especially in a contest prep, if I'm trying to really, really get hard as nails, peeled to the bone, what I typically do is as I get deeper in contest prep, I lower the test and I keep increasing the Mastron. So, let's say at 16 weeks out, I start with, let's say 700 tests, 700 Mastron. At 12 weeks out, that test might come down to 500 and the Mastron might go up to, say, 800. And then it'll keep doing that the deeper I get in a contest prep. That works extremely well for me for drying out without the need of AI. That's a beautiful thing about Mastron, is many times you're going to be able to get away without taking AI. This is person dependent, but most people I know that respond really well to Mastron, they're able to get away without an AI. Now, I know I'm going to get tons of questions about the hair thing, since some people do lose hair on Mastron. Me personally, Mastron is not something that causes shedding at all. If you guys have watched my videos, I have a hair protection routine. Essentially all I'm running right now is minoxidil. So right after I get out of the shower, I put minoxidil on my scalp, and then I take a DHT blocking shampoo and conditioner. And with that, I have zero shedding on fairly moderate to moderately high test with moderately high Mastron. No shedding at all. If I was to add in something like Tren typically, does cause me to have a little bit of shedding. If I'm to run even, something like, say, Winstrol sometimes will come with a little bit of shedding. I don't have any on Mastron. So this is something that it is going to be person dependent, just because, some people say that you're going to lose hair on Mastron. That's not always the case. It's very, very person dependent. Certain compounds cause some people to have shedding, some compounds don't. So this is where you just gotta, start your doses low, really pay attention to everything, how it's working within the body, and then you'll be able to go from there. But this is where, Mastron is extremely underrated because what it does when paired with test, and how you're able to take test higher than you would have previously, especially without the use of an AI, creates a very, very hard, dry look. That way, as you bring the test lower, the Mastron higher in a cut, you're gonna have no water. You're gonna be dry and peeled to the bone. But that's why I love it. It's versatile. I can run it for growth purposes, which I've been doing essentially the last 8 months or so. And then in a cut, comes with a great cosmetic look. And the cosmetic look does stay somewhat in the off season as well. If you guys go through my Instagram, you can see how I stayed a lot drier this off season than previous off seasons, and I attribute that completely to Mastron. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just want to give my opinion on what I believe to be the most underrated steroid. This is one that I see get kind of shot down all the time, and many people just aren't using it the way it could be used. You could get a lot more out of it if you put more attention to your test and use the Mastron as a way to get your test higher. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Leave any comments or questions down below. Be happy, be positive, be powerful. Have a great rest of your day.